which it was, until 11 days later. It was constituted. On August 25th of 2021, 25-year-old aspiring doctor, African-American Jelani Day was reported missing by Illinois State University to his family. On August 26th, his vehicle was found 60 miles north, an hour away in sundown town Peru, Illinois, with no license plate and Jelani's clothes in the back. Over the next couple of weeks, they identified that his wallet was found a few blocks east, his IDs were found a few blocks north, and his phone was found over the time period. But there was a body identified in the Illinois River face down on September 4th. Jelani wasn't identified as that body, which it was, until 11 days later. It was constituted on an autopsy that he died by drowning, but the only way they constituted that was because his body decomposed too much, and they're saying that he drowned because he was in the water. Peru is a well-known sundown town up until the day. In fact, they are reaching out to Miss Day right now, white and black people, saying thank you for speaking up because this is atrocity. Oh, and the drowning part, he's a swimmer. Step on their neck.
Good evening, and thank you for joining me for Conversations with Taz. As you can see, and I will go back and put these, well, actually, these links are on the Facebook fan page. And after I wrap tonight, I will put the links for the Justice for Jelani Day Facebook page and the GoFundMe, because the family is offering a cash reward for information, because somebody had to see something. Somebody has to know something. As we're in the home stretch of Black History Month 2022. This has been an interesting Black History Month. This has been a taxing Black History Month. It's almost like we have been plucked from our current time and sent back in time, the way things are just lining up. But we do have a bit of bittersweet news, and you understand why I say this, regarding the federal hate crime charges pertaining to the death of Ahmaud Arbery. The three gentlemen were unanimously convicted by the jury, and it only took them one day to deliberate. Let me play for you information that came out regarding the McMicheals mindset before they murdered Ahmaud Arbery. And I'm not talking about right before. I'm talking about, their lives leading up. And then we're going to get into another clip after that, but I'm going to come back after this clip.
Travis McMichael allegedly responding to a video of a black man pulling a prank on a white man with, "I'd kill that." In a reply to a Facebook video showing black teenagers, McMichael reportedly wrote, "Shoot all of them, those monkeys." The FBI testifying Travis McMichael referred to black people as animals, monkeys, and subhuman savages. Defendant William Roddy Bryant reportedly sending a text to a friend about his daughter's relationship with a black man. She has her now. Bryant also reportedly calling an MLK Day parade the Monkey Parade. Arbery's father, Mark, is visibly upset after hearing the latest testimony.
Man, that's a sickness. That is a sickness, and that Travis McMichael, he was a very racial hateful man.
This ain't something that just started with them being hateful. It go way back.
Now, I showed this clip specifically for non-Black people that say that, first of all, want to accept apologies meant for us, that want to tell us how to feel, how to react, how to connect and reconnect with culture, etc. We are not the ones being divisive. What is so ingrained in you all cost us our lives, our freedoms, our sanity, our security. Because white people will literally move Mr. Ed, Bambi, and Smokey the Bear into their house with no fear. Will roll around with a ball of yarn with a mountain lion with zero fear. But then forget all of their training and be in fear for their life and a career that they chose, or just terrified and can't think straight because they see this skin. But this next clip is what Ahmaud Arbery's mother had to say after court adjourned today.
I want to first say thank you to everyone who stood by us for this fight for justice for Ahmaud. It's been a very long, stressful fight for the members of the community, of the city of Brunswick, the state of Georgia, for the people who stood with us through the nation of the United States of America. We couldn't have, we would not be standing today without each and every one of you. I now want to address the members of DOJ. I'm very thankful that you guys brought these charges of hate crime. But back on January the 31st, you guys accepted a plea deal with these 3 murderers who took my son's life. Marcus and 2 of Ahmaud's aunties stood before the courts and begged the judge not to take a plea deal that the DOJ went before the judge and asked them to take a plea deal with these guys. That's a mother. Attorney Ben Crump just called these women, just called her name, Christian Clark. As I traveled to Brunswick on that Sunday afternoon, I spoke to Christian Clark and the lead attorney, Tara Lyons, begging them to please not take this plea deal. They ignored my cry. I begged them. Even after the family stood before the judge and asked the judge to not take this plea deal, the lead prosecutor, Tara Lyons, stood up and asked the judge to ignore the family's cry. Justice. That's not justice for Ahmaud. What we got today, we would have gotten today if it wasn't for the fight that the family put up on January the 31st. What the DOJ did today, they was made to do today. It wasn't because what they wanted to do. They were made to do their job today. Yes, ma'am.
As a mother, what role does this play today for you in any healing?
Healing?
She'll never heal.
I, as a mom, will never heal.
Mother, you're a mother.
I want to go back to the DOJ. I told the DOJ that yes, they were prosecutors, but one thing they didn't have a son that was lying in a cold grave.
Come on.
And they still didn't hear my cry. Okay. So again, we got a victory today. But there's so many families out there who don't get victories because of people that we have fighting for us. Okay? Yes, ma'am. I'm very thankful that a good jury was selected. I wasn't worried at all that we wouldn't. I knew Ahmaud's hands was in this from the very beginning.
Amen.
The way Ahmaud left here, I knew that we would get victory on the state level in the federal level. I knew that from day one. I do appreciate that they took the time out of their busy schedule to come in and listen to nonsense. Because the way Ahmaud left here was pure nonsense. It's senseless. But I appreciate their time. And they gave us a sense of a small victory. But we as a family will never get victory because Ahmaud is gone forever. Come on. If they made the driveway decisions that the McMicheals made, they'll be going to the same place that they're going. Come on. So they can make the same decisions, but they'll face the same consequences. Come on.
In case you missed it, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, went to Ahmaud Arbery's family and said, hey, we want to bring charges of a hate crime on the federal level against this trio of men. The family said, fine, that's what we want. We want justice on every level. Let's set a precedent. This will not bring our loved one back, but let's let people know that this is no longer Jim Crow. We're not going to have another Red Summer. We're not about to have angry mobs of white people taking their ignorance, their internalized fear, their mediocrity, their jealousy out on Black bodies. Then on January 31st, the DOJ says, no, we're going to do a plea. Now, I know a lot of people have spent today all over social media going, oh, but the DOJ works for the government. And who is the government supposed to work for? Now, the only time, generally speaking, do prosecutors offer a plea is if there's some question as to whether or not they can win the case. They had a slam dunk win. Because let's not forget, when this murderous trio was originally convicted in a very racist part of Georgia, it was a slam dunk. There was no question. When they polled the jury, no one had reservations. No one thought remotely that they were innocent. So why was there a plea made? And to those that are saying, oh, well, their sentence says that they'll never get out of prison. Why convict them? Why not? Because if those three individuals would have been members of a marginalized community, moreover, more specifically, if they would have been three Black men, you all would have called for them to be prosecuted within the community, the city, the county, the state, the region, and then federally. If you would have allowed them to last that long. Because historically, y'all like to have lynch mobs or shoot people coming in and out of courthouses. And yet again, this is why Black people say, be happy that we don't want the revenge that you fear so much. And we just want equity. We just want what we built, what our ancestors died for, what we work hard for every day. Because you all fear revenge because it's something you have consistently done and something you would do. But stop assuming everyone has your mindset. All of us are not mediocre and without culture. And we don't need to give a pretty little name to theft. But another benchmark for the day. It's time to fight for justice for Amir Locke. I would. No, nobody's surprised by this. The amount of white people, whether they view themselves as racist or not, but specifically evangelicals that are bending over backwards trying to twist the narrative and force their eyes to see something that no one else is seeing, that no one could possibly see, unless they lost their glasses or their contacts or just sat there with their eyes closed the whole time. But it's not surprising, because these are the descendants of people who claim that they fled to the United States for religious freedom, where in fact they weren't really being persecuted. They fled so that they could practice radicalized Christianity, and not Christianity with its full umbrella and all of its denominations. No, just the denominations that fall underneath the Protestant umbrella. That's why they were so okay with owning people and having other people do the work for them and blaming other people for what they do. Far too many racists have a kill fantasy. They have a murder kink. Hence old school picnics and lynching parties and KKK parades. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'm not going to go into detail here, but you can join me as always Saturdays at noon Eastern Standard Time. Links in the bio. It's a Zoom call. Alrighty. Now, some of you may be familiar with this sheer craziness. It's very... And when I'm talking about the United States, I say the United States because I'm tired of United States citizens trying to own the word American as if America isn't two whole ass continents, North America, South America. But you know what? Canada is doing some very American stuff. I know Mexico has to be embarrassed. Like, the United States and Canada is just fucking it all up for Mexico. Mexico is just down there chilling, living their best life, and having a brain and compassion. But conservatives' favorite sycophant coon is calling for Canada to be invaded. And I'm pretty sure in 3 guesses you would guess why, but let's roll the footage.
A prominent political commentator has called for the US to invade Canada. That's right, Candace Owens tweeted out that the US should deploy troops into Canada to deal with what she called the tyrannical reign of Justin Trudeau. She went on to refer to the Prime Minister as a dictator waging a war on innocent Canadian protesters.
This is the same woman who believes that people in Australia cannot leave their homes and they're under some weird dictatorship, because she used to be pretty good with research. Now I can't even categorize this as me search. So peaceful protesters that are blocking emergency vehicles, dominant and prominent fairways, using their own children as human shields, verbally and physically attacking people, supergluing themselves to the infrastructures of bridges, are peaceful, and Justin Trudeau is the bad guy. Candace Owens she thinks her proximity to yeast yeti yeet sauce makes her a white woman. Couldn't be anything else. It has to be that. It has to be that. It couldn't be anything else. Hey, Pastor Greg. Because Candace has lost her ever-loving mind. No, there's no reason for you to interrupt the show. No, you know better. Finish having your Zoomies and you'll be fine. Okay, and for those of you wondering if it is legal or not to record the police, I have that information for you from the horse's mouth.
Okay, cops out there. There's this thing called First Amendment auditing. Stop falling for it. They videotape you from public. It's not suspicious. It's not illegal. We should act like we're on camera anyway. They do not have to identify themselves. They are not breaking the law. Stop embarrassing us and escalating these situations. Please, chuck up the deuce. Or say tag me. And move it along. I love you, brothers and sisters in blue. But you're making us look bad.
Yes. I've been trying to tell people for quite a few months now, almost a year, that yes, it is perfectly legal to record the police. I know they tried to tell you most things, but here's a sad, sad truth. One, stop comparing police officers to firemen. Firemen are regularly tested. Firemen are regularly given information. They have to do online testing. They're given books and pamphlets to make sure they know fire codes, fire safety, all these different things. Police don't. Police have figured out how to not take their annual physical exams, and that's perfectly fine with most of their departments. A good 97 to 98% of police officers have no idea what the laws are in their jurisdiction alone. They're making it up according to what is convenient for them and what they believe will give them control over you and get a confession out of you as swiftly as possible. It is a sad, cold truth. This is why your best method is to record. And I encourage and urge you all, if you see an individual from a marginalized community having an interaction with the police, make your presence known and record. Because your presence there and your device recording could literally, most literally, be the difference between that person going home safely or that being their last day on earth. Not exaggerating. Okay, this next one that was sent in, all my good Christians out there, pay attention to this video and ask yourself, have you had this conversation or do you need to have this conversation? Let's go.
I think we haven't done a great job of answering this question.
Is Christianity the white man's religion?
I can understand that concern.
Why would you ever, how can you say, yield yourself, to the faith that has been used to perpetuate your oppression?
So since I've come to college, I'm not gonna lie, I tell people all the time, yeah, I'm not a Christian anymore.
If you believe that a spiritual system is on the wrong side of a moral issue, then obviously that's not going to bode well for that spiritual system.
And so what we're witnessing is a church that is not only on the margins nationally, but unfortunately in some respects, it's being pushed to the margins within its own community.
Now, I know that for a lot of people, this conversation can be very, very touchy. Completely understand. But here's the thing. A lot of people don't realize there's a difference between Christianity all over the world and Christianity within the United States. I have taught this to people before. Not the book that we're currently going over, but the book that we did towards the close of last year on Saturdays. I explained to people, one, it is time to stop the narrative that Christianity is a white man's religion and that Black people had no idea what Christianity was until they came over here in slavery. The Church of Ethiopia exists. It is one of the eldest churches on the planet, and it has zero governing body. It is also the singular church on the planet that has all 82 books of the Bible intact. This is why it always baffles me that missionaries want to go to the continent of Africa. How are you going to go to the people who are the descendants of the people who walked the earth with the Son of your God and tell them you're a bastardized virgin of the religion that's been passed down to them for generations, and they have all of the original text? But I digress. But there were people who were sold into and abducted into slavery that before they boarded the slave ships, whether they came over on a slave ship in the 1500s or in 1619, that were fully baptized and fully aware of Christianity. That's why some of the methods were so incredibly extreme in order to keep them under control, because they had to further bastardize and further mistranslate their Bible. And right now, we're going to take a quick pause for this month's ad.
It say Rosa Parks' story gets more complicated when we acknowledge that the white man who wanted her seat.
I don't give a fuck what he was suffering from. If you got ADHD, why you not accompanied by an adult? Motherfuckers with ADHD can't sit still, so why you need to sleep? Second of all, anxiety, motherfucker with anxiety can't be around that many people. I got anxiety. I can't be around that many motherfuckers. And why Rosa had to be the motherfucker get up? Out of everybody on the bus, she wanted the black lady to get up. Make one of them YT people get their ass up. Just cause she black, she had to move. You see what she did? Set her ass right there. Fuck you. Motherfuckers with ADHD move more than Whitney Houston moving on that stage when she was calling everybody name. This is for you, this is for you, this is for you. So he ain't need no fucking seat. He did just right. Set his ass up. Pull off, bus driver.
I don't know how many times, and this goes out to the racist, revisionist daughters of the Confederacy, educated, I infantilize plantation life, and I believe that, and for the people who believe that the South ever rose, why keep giving excuses to people in their racism? As someone on the spectrum and has lived with ADHD well before we had a name for it and a proper diagnosis, and well before they were willing to even test Black people, specifically Black girls, and for ADHD. Never has ADHD made me be mean or disrespectful. Never, not once. And I'm tired of people putting these stigmas as an excuse. And I don't think you realize what you do to the people today that have to live with these things. Because you have people believing that they're going to be rude, that they're going to be disrespectful, that this automatically makes them a bad person, that they can't sit still, that they can't do anything. No. ADHD does not equate racism. It does not. Anxiety does not cause you to be racist, xenophobic, homophobic, anti-Semitic, none of that. Your transphobia, biphobia, sexism, misogyny, racism makes you be that way. There was nothing complicated about what was going on in Montgomery, Alabama at the time that Black people as a collective said enough is enough. There is nothing complicated for racist white people to look at Black people after keeping their foot on our necks for hundreds of years, going, well, pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. And then when we do, those cities and towns are burnt down. But when we do, and we're the primary business owners in the city, Omaha, during the red summer, the crime bosses get their henchmen to put on blackface to go assault white women. And these white women knew that they were white men in blackface, but they didn't care. They were forever going to be the bridge to racism. But it gets it's not complicated. But here's someone I bet you didn't expect to hear talking about Black Lives Matter. You'd be surprised, especially since you would think most of his energy would be on the Ukraine right now. But I digress. Here we go.
Surprised that we have not yet been accused of provoking the Black Lives Matter movement. That would have been a good line of attack.
What do you think?
We did not do that.
What do you think of the Black Lives Matter movement?
I think that, of course, this movement was used by one of the political forces domestically in the course of election campaigns. But there are some grounds for it. Let's remember Colin Powell, who was Secretary of State, and he was also in charge of the Pentagon. Even he wrote in his book that even he, as a high-ranking official, had felt some kind of injustice towards himself his entire life as someone with a dark complexion, even from the USSR days. And in Russia, we have always treated with understanding the fight of African Americans for their rights. And there are certain roots to it. There is a certain foundation for this. But no matter how noble the goals that somebody is driven by, if it reaches certain extremes, if it spills over into extremism, acquires elements of extremism, we cannot approve this. We cannot welcome this. So our attitude to this is very simple. We do support African Americans' fight for their rights.
I tell you, I am so tickled when a racist tries to separate himself from other races because he's like, oh, I need your support. Actually, I just need your blood, sweat, and tears and your physical body because I know how strong you are and I know how proficient you are in invoking and provoking and achieving change. Because he's giving the same racist tropes and talking points that other racists around the world give. Oh, we understand you should have rights, but you're being extreme in it, meaning you want them right now. We'll give them to you eventually, maybe in another 400 or 500 years. When we're tired of using your innovations, your bodies, your ingenuity, and your creativity for our gain. because the generational wealth some of us built, the third generation of our family fumbled the ball, so we have to rebuild. Once we rebuild that, yeah, we'll give you another handful of rights. Now, I don't know what Black people Putin thought was just going to be like, oh, Putin loves us. It was going to jump over there to Russia. We have social media, dear. And before that, we had some amazing newscasters and broadcasters on international and national coast-to-coast news. So we know how you've been for a while. You're all about yourself. You're an extreme germaphobe. You like to present yourself as the perfect intellectual and physical specimen because you believe that you're an alpha male. That's why your tables are so long, because you need distance. And they're slightly tilted so you can look down at people. It's not alpha male shit, but okay, I digress. Trigger warning, lynchings will be discussed in this, but because of something that is happening at a museum and how they have been able to chronicle and keep the stories behind the lynchings and the people who were lynched alive.
We have this exhibit in our museum. We have these jars of soil that we put on shelves, and they're from lynching sites. And we had a middle-aged Black woman go to one of the sites, and she was nervous when she got there because it was in a remote location, it was on a dirt road. And she got to the site, she got down on her knees, she was going to start digging, and a pickup truck drove by, big white guy in the truck, stares at her, slows down, turns around, drives by again, stares at her some more, and she's terrified. Then the man parks the truck, gets out, walks over to her. She says she decides she's not going to tell him what she's doing. She says she's just going to say she's getting dirt for a garden. Man walks up to her and says, "What are you doing?" And then she told me later, she said, "Mr. Stevenson, something got a hold of me." And I told that man, she said, "I'm digging soil because this is where a Black man was lynched in 1937. I'm going to honor his life." She said, "It was just me and that big guy, but something got a hold of me." And she said, when she said that, the man just stood there. And then he said, "Does that paper you have talk about the lynching?" And she said, "Yes." And she gave the man the paper. He said, "Can I read it?" She said, "Yes." And he started reading the paper while she started digging. And the man finished reading the paper, and then he put the paper down, and he stunned her by saying, "Excuse me, ma'am, but would it be all right if I helped you?" And she said, "Yes." And he got down on his knees, and she offered him the implement to dig the soil. He said, No, I'll just use my hands." And this guy started throwing his hands into the soil and putting it in the jar, kept throwing his hands into the soil, and it blew her away. She said, "I had a tear running down my face. I just didn't expect it." And she said they got near the top, and she noticed that the man had slowed down, and she looked over at him, and she could see that his face was red. She could see his shoulders were shaking, and then she saw a tear running down his face, and she stopped. And she put her hand on his shoulder, and she said, "Are you all right?" And that's when the man said, No, I'm not all right." And he looked at her and he said, "I'm just so worried that it was my grandfather that participated in this lynching." And she said they both sat there on this roadside weeping about the history, about the pain, about the suffering. She said, "Well, I'm going back to Montgomery to put this in the Leckers Museum at EJI." He said, would it be all right if I just followed you?" And I watched both of these people come in with that jar of soil. And I don't say that because I think beautiful things like that always happen when we do the truth-telling, when we do the hard work. But I think until we do the truth-telling, until we do the hard work, we deny ourselves the beauty that is justice. And that's what I want to say to even the angriest white people, the angriest and most bitter people on these issues of race and justice. I want them to understand that there is something that feels more like freedom, more like equality, more like justice waiting for all of us. Right. But to get there, we have to have the courage to actually address the things that we are dealing with.
I know this week marks the close of Black History Month 2022, but do keep in mind, like I always say, the link is in my bio. It is a static link. It does not change ever. But you can always join me, like I said, noon Eastern Standard Time. You don't have to have the book necessarily that we're reading at the time, because right now we're reading regarding Malcolm X, The Dead is Arising. But when I say I give historical context, I give you all the history that's taking place at the same time that what's going on in the book is taking place. Because this are just the notes from part 1, and this is part 2. And if you miss any of them, feel free to contact me. We can do a makeup session. This last clip I have said before, and people thought that I was joking. They thought that I was just saying it in passing, like a hee hee ha ha. Because for a period of time, I lived in a house. It didn't come from Sears, but it was a home kit. And it was pretty cool because you could go through when they used to have like the Sears catalogs, the JCPenney catalogs, you could flip through, pick out a house, train would bring it. It's like a 75-page booklet that would teach you how to assemble these houses, and they weren't chintzy. Take a look.
Google Sears Magnolia House. This is one of only 7 known examples in the world. Why?
Well, that concludes tonight's show. And as always, thank you for joining me. And each one teach one, each one reach one. Tomorrow, join me with my co-host Chris for Get Into It with Taz and Chris. We have some things to talk about in sports, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a review on Inventing Anna. If you haven't seen it on Netflix, tomorrow might be some spoilers for you. But we're going to update you on where people are now and some other tidbits that, excuse me, maybe you didn't know about Anna Delvey. But until tomorrow.